Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. My name is Harrison.
I'm Ashley.
And on this Crime Couple episode, we're going to be looking at the case of Alonzo Brooks, a young man aged 23 who ended up disappearing and found dead just a short time after him and a few friends went to a party.
Alonzo Brooks grew up in Topeka, Kansas. He had a large family consisting of 5 siblings, 3 boys and 2 girls. He was the baby of the family. In his younger years, he really enjoyed karate. His family described him as very shy but playful. He was kind-natured and his favorite color was red.
So on April 3rd, 2004, Alonzo and a group of friends decided to go to a last-minute party they heard about. This was supposed to be to see a service member off. He was getting ready to go into the military, so there's a group of friends putting together a party for him. The issue is the party was different than the town of Gardner that they lived in. It actually in a town called Racine, which is about 47 miles away. Now, we understand that none of them had ever been to this city before. They don't know anyone in this town. They just heard of this party. So the 3 friends that he ended up going with was Justin Sprague, Daniel Fune, and Tyler Brogart. Now, these friends are featured in the documentary that Netflix has of Unsolved. They all spoke about different occurrences, their own personal experiences with what they experienced that night, and their own depiction of Alonzo. Now, for the rest of this, Alonzo, his nickname was Zoe, so we'll be referring to him as Zoe, just to make it a little bit easier. Now, from our understanding of what was being told, Zoe decided to ride with Justin to this party. And I think it was like, they said about an hour or so away.
Right.
And
in a small town.
Town.
One gas station, country,
Not even a grocery store. There's not like lots of homes. It's very out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Now, Alonzo, or Zoe, was mixed race. He was Hispanic and black. So his other friends were white. And this is in a predominantly white area in the middle of a small country town in Kansas. So they get out to this party at this house. It's down a long driveway. It's next to a big field, like, middle of nowhere kind of thing. They show up, and they start, hanging out with people. They start trying to integrate with what's going on there and trying to get accustomed to the party. They said at first it was a great time. There was a lot of people, having fun, dancing,
cards,
drinking, games, things like that. Normal party kind of stuff. One thing they did mention is at the time, Zoe is 23, or 22, 23. His friends that he went with were a little bit younger than him, and they did mention that the majority of the people at this party were probably between 16 to 20s in that range.
So from all accounts, people who were there said there were about 30 to 50 people there. So it was a pretty good sized party. And it was all basically outside and then in this little farmhouse. They were playing card games and drinking, like we said. And Zoe, who was normally kind of quiet and not really super outgoing, appeared more outgoing this evening. He was talking to people, playing, and he seemed to be in a great mood, which is what Justin and Tyler and Daniel said. Somehow in the night, it was around 11 o'clock or so, Zoe got into an altercation with someone else at the party. We're not sure why or what the reason for the fight was, but from all the things we've read, it seems to be race involved. Because like we said, he was predominantly the only black person at this party. So mostly it was all cowboys, and some places say he was the only black guy. Some people say there were 2 to 3. So he got in this fight and Daniel broke it up. Shortly after that, Daniel and Tyler both left the party after being there for like an hour to an hour and a half. Daniel went to another party, and I think Tyler decided he just wanted to go home. So him and Justin were having fun at the party, and they're smoking cigarettes, drinking. They said getting high. And Justin realized he was out of cigarettes. So he goes to bum one off Zoe, and Zoe had like 1 or 2 left. And he's like, dude, I gotta go get more cigarettes if we're gonna stay at this party. So Justin goes to leave to get a pack of cigarettes for himself and a pack for Zoe. And he states that he was supposed to make a left out of the driveway, but he accidentally took a right. And we don't know if he's been drinking or, he just wasn't
unfamiliar with the area.
Right, exactly. So he drives for about 30 minutes and realizes he doesn't know where he's at. He's lost. So he calls his friend Adam at the party and says, I'm not going to make it all the way back. Adam, can you please give Zoe a ride home? So Adam says, yes, of course, I will take Zoe home. So the night goes on, they're still having fun, and it's getting late, and Adam's like, I'm going to get out of here. He doesn't see Zoe anywhere. So he assumed that Zoe had already gotten a ride or has left already. So Adam leaves the party.
So now we're at the morning after the party. Everyone left. Everyone thought everything was cool. Zoe's mom gets a call asking if Zoe made it home. And she's like, I assume so. He should be in bed, and went to go check. Not in his bed, bed still made.
He's not been home at all.
Not been home. So she starts freaking out. At this point, she starts calling around, and some of the other people had mentioned that their phones started buzzing, saying, anyone seen Zoe? His mom calls another friend of Zoe. His name is Rodney. Now, Rodney is really labeled as Zoe's best friend. They've been kid friends since elementary school kind of stuff, growing up together.
And it's not like Zoe to stay over someone's house. He was a real big homebody. He liked to sleep in his own bed. So for him not to be there in the morning, Maria, his mom, really thought something was wrong.
So at this point, they start, retracing steps. So they go back over to the house in Lacine, and Rodney meets up with Justin, who was the one who took Zoe to the party. Now, from what we hear from Rodney, this is the first time that he has ever met Justin. So you have someone who is his best friend saying he's never met these other people. Never talked to him, nothing. And, and they're supposed to be friends. So you have some weird collision of people on either side of this young man's life.
And then we draw the question, how good of a friend was Justin, Tyler, and Daniel if Rodney had never met them?
Right. So they start retracing steps. And from this point is where things start getting a little weird. And they go to the town, they go to the house, they go right to the house. Now, I do want to say, if Justin got lost the night prior trying to find his way out to go get cigarettes, there's some interesting things about that. So first, on one of the accounts, he says he got lost, and then his car was stuck, and he couldn't get back. But, he never says in the interview how he got back. If he was towed, if he got his car unstuck. He eventually got out with the car and found his way back to home, because he made it back somehow.
But he found his way back to the house quite easily from what we read.
He was able to meet with them up the next day at the house where the party was at, and didn't get lost that time. So they start going on foot, going to the house. They realize the house is empty. They finally find out that it's a rental property, but they look in the house and it's clean. There's not a mess in the yard. They look inside. The house is not a mess. Didn't look like it just had a massive party. Right.
And if anyone's ever been to a party out there, you know that you don't clean up after the party.
Especially if it's a bunch of kids, 16 to 20.
Exactly.
So they start walking the field in the yard, and Rodney's walking, and he finds...
Wait, but there was a guy in a four-wheeler that rode up to Rodney and said, "You can't be here." So they were really kind of on
high alert at that point.
Exactly, because why? It's a country town. Why would someone do that?
So one thing about Zoe, or two things I should say. One is he always wears boots, from what his mom said, and Rodney says he always wears his beanie.
Yeah.
Well, they found one beanie across the road from the field where the house was, along with one boot. And then on the field where the house was, they found his other boot.
So one was across the street and one was across the driveway. And this driveway is super long. So
along with his beanie, they found it.
Right. It looks like somebody just drove tossed.
That's what
tossed
he
around.
said it looked like.
Yeah, because they weren't covered, they weren't hidden, they were just out in the open.
So another interesting fact is Zoe had injured his ankle a few weeks prior to that by playing basketball. So it was very odd for him not to have shoes on, obviously, in the middle
If you
of
have
the
an
field.
injured foot, yeah. So after finding his boots and the beanie, they decide this doesn't look right. We need to go to the police department. So Maria and Rodney go to the police department and they were told, I'm sorry, you have to wait 48 hours for this to be considered a missing person. So right at that point, Maria was upset and she thinks her child's missing. So he went missing on Saturday night, which is the party. On Sunday, the three boys, Rodney and his mom, went and looked. And then on Monday morning, his brother and his wife go to the property to just kind of scope it out and look and see if there was anything that they could find.
And they also said the same thing. As soon as they got there, the place was clean. Mm-hmm. Never looked like it had a huge party like it did over the weekend. It just doesn't add up. Late on April 4th, after 48 hours, the police department in Kansas did go ahead and take over. This is in Lynn County. So Lynn County Sheriff's Department did take over after 48 hours from the missing person. Their initial went over the field, went through the area, and they reported that there was negative contact. They did not find anything. They did not see anything that was any signs of Zoe being around. So the police department went right ahead, and apparently they said they did hundreds of interviews, went through lie detector tests, and they did have a good amount of people that turned down doing the lie detector test. So they went through a process of that to get everything started, and apparently, like I said, put a lot of people in question.
Right, but people did refuse to do the lie detector test, so that leads us to believe, why did they refuse? What are they hiding? So now we're going to go over kind of a small timeline based off what we gathered with our research. So he disappeared on April 4th, and 3 days later, the KBI took over on April 7th. They sent an evidence recovery team, search dogs. They even had a helicopter. 3 days later, on April 10th, the FBI joins the search. And then 2 days later, April 12th, the rescue team, they searched the creek bed. They have divers. They have cadaver dogs. And they noted that at that point, the creek was about 3 feet deep. In their searches, they found nothing to indicate there had been a body there, anything moved. They found no evidence of clothing or anything that was awry. So April 15th, after missing 11 days, the family really wanted to be a part of this, and Lynn County put a stop to it. They said, no, you're not allowed to search. You cannot go on the property. It's private property. So the family was really kind of upset about this. I know if my family member was missing, I would want to be there every day looking, finding, answers. You can't just sit at home and twiddle your thumbs and expect.
You'd be going insane.
Yeah.
And I find it personally, I don't know if that's normal, like standard of how you do it, but I feel like it's kind of weird they wouldn't let the family help in searching.
Right.
I feel like I've heard of other cases where, people get groups together to go do search parties.
Right. And the families involved and people in the community. Right. So this just seemed very odd because it was very closed off and they wanted to do everything and they just didn't allow the family to be a part of it. So on May 1st,
27 days after.
Exactly. 27 days. They're like, okay, go ahead, family. You can go in and do your searching. So they got everybody together. They had hundreds of people and not 30 minutes went by and they found the body of Zoe on the creek bed. Exactly where they had all looked before, but then he just shows up miraculously.
And so in relation from where the house is, so you have the long driveway, you have this house, and then over past the field, you have the creek. So it's on the same cut area of land this creek runs through, and that's where they found the body.
Right. And it was on the creek bed. When they found him, they noted, his brother stated, his color looked just like him.
Normal.
There was no bloating. He didn't look too badly decomposed. His family recognized him. And I don't know about y'all, but I've watched crime stories and read evidence and looked at, all this kind of stuff forever. And if you have a body that's been decomposing in the elements for 27 days, especially near water, there's going to be pretty heavy decomposition. And, we noted in that area around that time, April and May, the weather was anywhere from 40 degrees to 68 degrees. So the temperature was variant, but they said it didn't play a factor in the decomposition.
So when they found the body, everything was on him like what he wore out of the house. He had his clothes on, all his stuff was with him. They found a wallet, so his identification was with him. Some cash, a ring, a lighter, all that was on his body when found. And later his mother commented when she got those items back, even though he was in the creek, bank area, they didn't look like they were damaged by water or damaged by anything. They were actually really well intact still. And a lot of stuff still looked good.
On the Unsolved Mysteries, she had the stuff that was in his pockets. And this was in 2004 and it's 2019 when that was shot. It's, that many years later and it's still in good shape.
Yeah.
So it didn't appear to be in the elements for 27 days.
Now, the medical examiner on this case, his name is Dr. Eric Mitchell. One interesting thing that we found about Dr. Mitchell is that in 1993, he was,
agreed to resign.
Yeah, asked to step down, agreed to resign because of some pretty interesting practices he had. So he was found that he was, without permission from the victim's family, he was removing unauthorized organs from corpses, right? And then also storing body parts and skeletal pieces in his office, again, without victim's family permission. So, we read a couple things.
That was a little unsettling. Yeah. So, I don't know that I trust this ME. That's
He's kind of all
creepy.
over the place in some of his previous, endeavors.
Right.
So, going forward with what we are told about this, we're kind of skeptical.
Right. So, the ME did not know how Alonzo met his death. Whether it was accidental or if foul play was involved. So the ME did say that there were no penetrating injuries. His clothing was intact. There were no gunshot wounds or stab wounds through his clothes. There were no bone fractures. His skull was intact. It didn't appear that he had blunt force trauma. The medical examiner said he could have drowned, but normally when you have a drowning victim, you have water in your lungs, and he did not find any of that. He kind of questioned whether he could have been strangled, because he couldn't really access the soft tissues in his neck because the animals and insects had gotten to the neck area. So he couldn't really rule that out. But he did say there was no identifiable evidence noting to a beating. So he just left this undetermined. So there still are no circumstances resolving his death. Various reports and blogs. We've looked at message boards, and in that that town, and even all around the United States, people were this was a topic that they talked about. Okay, people were saying their opinions of what happened, whether it was a drowning or foul play, and there were little snippets where someone had made a comment that people from Lacine know what happened. So in there, if you want to talk about the Boone family.
Yeah. So, and again, this is all based off of speculation. So actually, we were talking about this earlier. This whole story, since there's no actual solid factual piece to work off of, this is all opinion and hearsay. But in the town of Lacine and in that area, There is a prominent family that's known as the Boone family, and they kind of, have slight controls, have the upper hand in a lot of situations.
They own a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
They said that there was a cafe
There's
slash
a family
restaurant.
cafe that they own that's not too far from where this happened. So some people were saying, and again, it is supposed to be like white supremacist kind of things that are going on in this town.
Right.
There was some talk that possibly at the party, Zoe was talking to a white girl that was part of the Boone family, and they didn't like that. That they were possibly holding him in like a freezer, that they preserved the body waited till the cops left from doing
Because
their
the
initial
decomposition from the ME said,
Yeah, because sorry, go ahead.
Said that he hadn't, they said that it could have been in the elements for 27 days, but it didn't appear by his decomposition that he had been out in the weather.
And like Ashley said earlier, his brother had said that his color was pretty much the same. They didn't see any noticeable bloating of his body from being in the water.
Or the skin slippage when you've been in the water.
So a lot of people thought maybe he was being preserved, maybe he was being held somewhere
and then
for that
killed
time
later.
and then killed. So there's tons of different things out there.
Right.
So the Boone family is kind of like a weird thing. They were talking about, this could be a cover up that maybe their kids were at the party, something happened, and they're kind of covering it up from them getting in trouble.
Or the Boone family has the sheriff's department underneath their thumb, and the sheriff's department just kind of turned their head. And, that would make sense if the family wasn't allowed to search. Like, what?
They kept all this so secret.
What are they hiding? What are the police trying to cover up? So I mean.
And also there was talk of one of the judges for that area, or someone who said it in some type of political manner, that their kid was at the party too. And so there's a lot of weird hands in the pot, and it's a small town. It's a small, close-knit town.
Right.
And so you don't really know what's going on here. All you know is that, this kid died, right? It's undetermined how he died, but he is on the same property where they said he's disappeared.
They did a whole search, and then the family finds him after 30 minutes
in the same spot. And the sheriff's office said they searched that exact area, and he was not there. So we believe someone placed that body there after knowing the sheriff's search was done. So that means after the sheriff's search was completed and the family was allowed, someone knew about that.
Right.
So that came from inside. So also there had been reports and some other comments, like someone saw Zoe running away from the house, sprinting away from the house at like 4 a.m. Now, mind you, also he had reportedly had a bad ankle from, basketball injury. Right. So, that would be, why would he be running? Well, he'd be running for his life. So some people were saying maybe he got jumped by these people. Right. Now back further, in the beginning of the story, when Justin got his car stuck, lost, whatever it was, he called this guy Adam. Adam has never been interviewed. This Adam person has not really been identified. He's not been interviewed. He's not been
We don't know his last
questioned.
name.
No one knows.
It's nowhere.
So there's a circulating idea that Adam doesn't exist and may be a ploy to divert the attention away from Justin and to say, no, this other guy I talked to said he's going to do it, and completely divert it, because there's a lot of things that don't make sense. And Rodney, his best friend, had made a few mentions. How are you going to take someone to a party and not make sure that they leave?
47 miles away.
And, I'm kind of under the assumption, what if the party never even happened? What if the party never happened?
Yeah.
Everything was clean. I
don't agree with that one.
I don't know, but there's no real evidence, right? So, and how did you get lost, get your car unstuck, get back? There's a whole bunch of things that just don't add up for me, period, with that, especially with this other thing, this Adam kid. But either way.
My thing is, when Sheriff Stites released the scene to the family, who did he tell? It's a small town. He told somebody, and somebody knew they needed to get rid of the body, and this was the perfect way. The family's going to search, basically let them find what they're looking for. So in March of 2019, the KBI issued a statement to the family. It's a letter saying there was no evidence of Zoe being a victim of a crime. After the lengthy investigation into his death, it was closed, like absolutely closed. So from what we've read, after the Unsolved Mysteries documentary, there was question brought up, a lot of questions, and the family requested the investigation be reopened. So today, I believe I read they exhumed the body and were doing some additional tests. And to this day, this case is still, I don't know that it's opened, but it's still pending investigation. They're still trying to look into what really happened to Alonzo Brooks. Thank y'all so much for watching. We really enjoyed this case and hope you did too. Don't forget to like and subscribe for our future videos. Thank you.
Bye.